Decreasing Sugar Intake, a digital storyboard by me, Ashley Guevara. For this class, I decided to reduce the amount of sugar I consume. That was my overall goal. I decided to go on and make some additional smaller goals to help me keep track of myself, keep motivated, and essentially meet my overall goal. Some of the things I decided to do was to limit the amount of money I spend on sweets during the week. In other words, when I went grocery shopping, I could not spend any money on cookies or cake or Cokes. I also decided I could only have one can of Coke during the week. I was having about 3 or 4 an average during the week. So I decided that if I gave myself a limit of only one, this could help me reach my goal. Another thing that I struggle with is snacking late at night. I tend to go to bed really late and I tend to get hungry. What happens is that I snack, but it's not usually on big meals or full meals. It's usually on cookies or just sweets that I have around the house. I decided that if I could go to bed a little earlier, I wouldn't have to get hungry and have snacks late at night. Another thing that really helped me was to drink more water. I kept a jug of water in my office and I made sure I always had water with me. This, I hope, would help me reduce my cravings. Here are some of the factors why I chose to focus on reducing sugar intake. First of all, was the physical experience of stomach aches. I have been experiencing this ache since I was diagnosed with IBS, and it usually tends to get worse as I consume more unhealthy food. Also, at the beginning of the year, I was checked, I got a biometric check in the place I work, and my cholesterol levels were not doing very good, or at least I was average. Um, some other thing is that also in my job, we got, I can't remember what the wellness age, I can't remember what it's called, but basically, based on my behaviors, my health, and all the factors taken into consideration, I am 10 years older. Like my behaviors are reflected of those of a 35-year-old, and I am 25. And that's sort of scary. That is, in fact, really scary. And something it's just there is that dependency in this behavior. I cannot have a full meal without having something sweet. And again, this is just one of the risk factors that involves engaging in addictive behaviors. Let me share you that this behavior has been going on for years. And I think I have a pretty good idea of why that is. The biopsychosocial spiritual model encourages you to look at several life domains, the aspects that make up who you are. This right here is my mommy. And as you can tell, she also loves sweets. I left home to go to college about 6 years ago, and I can no longer blame mommy for the issue. But I know who to blame now. This is the new enabler, aka my husband. He's too sweet, he can't help it. Now, him and I live together, and it's only us two in the house. So this has been a barrier because he is not committed on the same goal I am. And even though I'm not spending any money on cookies, he can't help it but treat himself to some. Therefore, although I'm trying to not buy any, there's already some cookies and cake and sweets in my house because of him. Like I said, he is not committed on the same goal as I am. And he doesn't really have to. I mean, that's just my way of going about things, but it definitely makes it harder. Another thing is that I have to balance my multiple duties between job and school and the house. I tend to be really busy, and it is not unusual for me to grab a quick snack at a fast food restaurant. Sometimes I get home really late from work or from school, and I can't help it but munch on something quick. And of course, as you guessed it, I tend to go for the sweets or the high salts and the carbohydrates.
Picture warm, gooey cookies, crunchy candies, velvety cakes, waffle cones piled high with ice cream. Is your mouth watering? Are you craving dessert? Why? What happens in the brain that makes sugary foods so hard to resist? Sugar is a general term used to describe a class of molecules called carbohydrates, and it's found in a wide variety of food and drink. Just check the labels on sweet products you buy. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, maltose, lactose, dextrose, and starch are all forms of sugar.
Really, really, why? Like I said, it is everywhere. But through the readings, the blogs, and my experiences attending the NA meetings, I have come to understand that sugar behaves very, very like a drug, like any other drug. So, yes, sugar and any other form of carbohydrates act in a very similar way. How? Whenever I take a bite of those red velvety cakes, those that sweetness in my mouth activates some receptors that send information to my brain. The cerebral cortex receives that information, and what happens is that some parts in the brain, in other words, a reward system, is activated. This reward system is the same that gets activated with other drugs such as marijuana, alcohol, and cocaine. And that's not it. This reward system alerts your body and it makes it feel good. So, having the first sip of Coca Cola or a bite of a double chocolate cake activates that reward system and tells you, do it. You can have more. It's going to be fine. But most importantly, it feels good. And this is a complicated network that has been in the eye of researchers for both mental health and the addictions field. Why? Because we know the important and crucial role this reward system has on drugs and its effects. So this reward system, we know it gets overactivated by the release of dopamine and other neurotransmitters. So this is what is really, really making it hard for me. I mean, yes, we have to take into consideration that my mommy is a sugary junkie just like me. Yes, I have to admit it that my husband sometimes make it hard on me. But again, those are all decisions I make. And I like this model. It makes sense. Why is it so hard? It's just more easily said than done. But this is why. There is a whole complicated network that is being overactivated by my consumption and my overconsumption in sweets. But I get it now. Although there's a lot more, much more to this complicated network, I just wanted to focus on how these reward regions play an important role in the behavior I am focusing on, which is the sugar intake or high sugar intake. And just I pray that I continue to work on this matter and strengthen that bond with my God. Because White made it seem pretty clear when he said, why are we screening for cancer, AIDS, HIV, and all these other disorders, yet we're not screening for addictive behaviors, alcohol misuse, and other drug misuse? So I think one of the biggest learnings and takeaways is how we have been shaping this disease and what we should be doing, and that is educating our consumers and the society as a whole of the adverse effects of drugs. Another important thing that I took away from this course relates back to this first one, just the education and the educating we've been doing in our society. We must see this behavior as like any other, and we must continue to build our competency. And i I am fascinated by the role by the female and gender roles in the recovery process, just by the way females are sort of questioned whenever they come into AA or whenever they want to go into recovery, and how their successes and their barriers are experienced by other members, specifically male members. And I think that as professionals, we should be aware of how the social classes and even race affects this recovery battle. We think that addiction is only on the street under the bridge, but no, addiction can be everywhere. We think that addiction only hits people with low income, and in fact, data shows that it's the exact opposite. People with in the highest levels of the social ladder are affected the same, if not as even more than other economies. Something else that was prominent in both of our texts was the gap in treatment intervention. White and von Wormer state that there is a lack of data in addiction recovery and the most effective processes. I know that they talk about a strengths perspective and the recovery oriented practices, but we must be able to personalize these processes to our individuals. So again, going back to multicultural competency, males, females, um, individuals who are younger, individuals who don't have a job, and just have that adaptability in treatment for all ages, races, and genders, as well as more research in addiction. And another treatment intervention gap is that we are not educating consumers as early as we should be doing. And treatment is not starting as early as it should be starting. And one of the biggest pieces I take away from here was a very personal experience that I have been undergoing for the last since I started my master's, and that's been that I am usually hit back with things such as "You are too young to help me. You are too young to know." And I think that White and Van Wormer state their own experiences in saying that although they are in recovery, you do not need to be in recovery to be able to help someone else. As you all may know through the blogs, I have someone who said that he wouldn't trust me in helping him navigate through the process because I hadn't been an addict or I hadn't been in recovery myself. And I think that it's important to understand that it is not the experience, but rather the self-awareness and your ability to provide unconditional positive regard that will be most beneficial for the client. I usually say, in a joking manner, but also just out of the bottom of my heart, why aren't we questioning males in the delivery room? Why aren't we questioning males in their gynos, or the help us ladies with only we can experience? We aren't questioning those male authorities in the delivery room. And but yeah, we question individuals who haven't been in recovery, and we question young individuals. So this is something that that is part of my advocacy plan to change the perception we have on young individuals. And I think that's going to be a little harder with the recovery process, and them thinking that we aren't someone to trust. And I just want to say that it's an important thing to consider as we're undergoing our professional practice.